March 18, 1957, 6:12 a.m. The hallway smelled wrong. The package waited where it shouldn't, and Bumpy Johnson did not touch it. The door did not open all the way. It stopped at the point where habit usually took over. Bumpy Johnson let it stay there. The hallway was empty, but it did not feel unused. Old buildings carried memory the way men carried scars. This one had learned how to watch without eyes. The light above the stairs flickered once, then steadied. That was enough. The package sat just past the threshold, close enough to claim, far enough to accuse. Brown paper, clean edges. The string tight, careful, almost respectful, too respectful. Deliveries in Harlem did not arrive with patience. They arrived with hurry or fear. This had neither. Bumpy did not step forward. He stood still, one hand on the inside knob, feeling the cold travel into his palm. The smell reached him next. Fresh paste, recent hands, not the building's hands, not the block. That was the first wrong thing. The second came when he noticed the floor. The dust around the package was disturbed in a half circle, as if someone had placed it down, adjusted it, then thought better of adjusting again. A man who wanted it to be seen exactly as it was. Visible danger lived in small mistakes like that. Down the hall, a door opened a finger's width. No sound, no greeting, just a slice of dark. Bumpy did not turn his head. Whoever stood there would learn more from being ignored than from being caught looking. He eased the door shut until the latch rested without clicking. Not closed, not open. A position chosen, not assumed. The package remained on the other side. Bumpy leaned his shoulder against the doorframe and waited long enough for the building to settle. Pipes spoke somewhere below. A radio coughed to life 2 floors down, then softened. Morning was moving, whether invited or not. He had seen threats wrapped in silk and gifts wrapped in blood. This was neither. This was a question pretending to be polite. He did not answer questions like that with hands. Instead, he let the hallway keep the object. If it was meant to harm, it would grow impatient. If it was meant to test, it would reveal the tester. Either way, the package would speak louder by staying silent. A man in a hurry would knock again. A man in control would wait. Bumpy adjusted his coat and stepped back into the apartment, leaving the door where it was. From the kitchen, he poured coffee and let it cool untouched. Steam faded. Time moved forward without permission. He did not check the window. He did not send word. He did not call for muscle. That would have been a reply. There was a line he lived by, learned early and paid for once. When something arrived uninvited, you let it sit long enough to show its owner's patience, or their fear. Minutes passed, then more. The hallway remained quiet. No footsteps returned. No knock corrected the silence. Bumpy finally spoke, not to the door, not to the building, but to the space itself. "If you wanted it inside," he said calmly, "you would have knocked." The words stayed where they were said. The package did not move. And somewhere nearby, someone learned that waiting could be heavier than acting. If the first move had already been made, who was supposed to make the second? Bumpy finished his coffee after it had gone cold. He did not mind. Cold things told the truth faster. He returned to the door without urgency. The latch was where he left it. The hallway had not changed its mind. The package still waited, obedient in a way that felt practiced. He opened the door just enough to let light fall across the paper. No more, no less. The string was tied with a double loop, not a knot meant to be pulled loose, a knot meant to be cut. That detail settled something in him. This was never meant to be opened quietly. Whoever prepared it expected tools, not fingers. Preparation like that came from distance, from planning, from someone who did not expect to be present when the answer arrived. Bumpy crouched, careful not to cross the threshold. He studied the label without touching it. The handwriting was neat, deliberate. Block letters learned young and never softened. No return name, no address, just his. He straightened again. Down the stairs, footsteps paused. One step, then another. Someone pretending to decide whether to continue. Bumpy did not look. He did not need to. That hesitation told him everything. Whoever had come was not there to retrieve the package. They were there to see what he would do with it. He did nothing. The footsteps retreated. That settled the visible danger. Not removed, not resolved, just understood. The kind of danger that lost its teeth once it realized it would not be fed. Bumpy stepped back and closed the door fully this time. The latch clicked, a small sound, final enough. Inside, the apartment felt the same as always. Chair by the window, table with one uneven leg. A place built for thought, not display. He sat and allowed himself to consider the day ahead. There was an internal line he had drawn, quiet and firm. By the time the sun leaned west, the truth would show itself. Not because he demanded it, because pressure, when left alone, always chose a direction. He spent the morning as he always did. A short walk, a nod to men who did not ask questions, a glance that reminded others not to ask them either. No one mentioned the package. That silence confirmed more than any warning could have. By midday, word had already moved. Not fast, not loud, just enough. The kind of movement you felt, not heard. Bumpy could sense the shape of it the way sailors sensed weather. When he returned, the hallway greeted him the same way it had that morning. No change, no correction. The package remained untouched. That was the answer some men feared. He stood there a long moment, hat still on, coat still buttoned. A man passing on the stairs slowed, then thought better of stopping. Respect often arrived disguised as distance. Bumpy spoke once, low and even. "I don't bring trouble inside my home." No one replied. He turned and walked back in, leaving the object where it was, leaving the decision where it belonged. By nightfall, someone would understand what refusal meant. But one thing remained unsettled, pressing quietly against the walls of the building. If the package was never meant to be opened, who exactly was it meant to expose? The package stayed where it was. That was the first thing Bumpy noticed when he returned after noon. Not the light, not the smell of boiled cabbage drifting from somewhere below. The package. Objects learned patience from people. This one had learned it well. He did not stop in the hallway. Stopping would have made it a meeting. Instead, he passed it the way a judge passed a defendant before the hearing, seen, registered, already placed in context. He went inside, removed his coat, and hung it with care. Habit mattered. When habit stayed intact, authority stayed intact. From the kitchen window, he watched the street without leaning forward. Men moved with their collars up, winter still refusing to leave Harlem even though the calendar said otherwise. A truck idled too long at the corner, then rolled on. Nothing unusual. That was the point. Pressure liked ordinary places. By mid-afternoon, the building had absorbed the presence of the package. Doors opened and closed more quietly than usual. Radios stayed low. No one lingered on the stairs. Silence had weight now, and everyone felt it. Bumpy left again briefly. When he returned, the package had not shifted an inch. No attempt to retrieve it. No second delivery. No note slipped under the door to soften intent. That told him more than action ever could. He sat at the small table and placed his hat beside him, brim down. He did not touch it again. He did not need to. The day was folding toward its answer. There was no rush in him, only alignment. By the time evening arrived, whoever had sent the package would either appear or accept the cost of absence. That was the deadline, not marked, not spoken, simply understood. The truth about men was simple. Those who believed in their own move waited to see its effect. Those who doubted themselves rushed to explain. Bumpy waited. A knock finally came, light and measured, late enough to pretend it was casual. He did not answer it at first. He allowed the knock to exist alone to show its shape. Then he opened the door fully. The man standing there was younger than he should have been. Clean coat, empty hands, eyes that tried to stay level and failed by inches. "You got something downstairs," the man said. Bumpy looked at him without changing his expression. "I know," he replied. The man swallowed, not hard, just enough. There was no shouting, no accusation, just space between two truths. The weight in the hallway shifted, not physically but meaningfully. And before a single word could soften it, one question settled between them, quiet and final. "If this wasn't yours to carry, why did you come alone?" The young man did not answer right away. He stood there with the posture of someone who had rehearsed walking away more than standing still. His hands stayed open, palms visible, as if emptiness could be mistaken for honesty. Bumpy let the silence do its work. The hallway seemed narrower with another body in it. The light above the stairs hummed faintly. Somewhere below, water ran and stopped. The building listened. "I was told to check," the man said finally. Bumpy tilted his head once, not curiosity, measurement. "Check what?" he asked. The man's eyes flicked toward the stairs, then back. He chose his words the way men chose paths in unfamiliar neighborhoods, careful but already wrong. "That it arrived." Bumpy nodded, slow and deliberate. He did not step aside. He did not block the doorway either. The doorframe remained the line, the same one from the morning, the same one no one crossed without being invited. "It arrived," Bumpy said. "You see that?" The man shifted his weight. Shoes scraped lightly against the floor, a sound too small to matter except that it did. "That's all I needed to know," the man said. He made the mistake then. He tried to leave too cleanly, too quickly, as if the exchange had been finished by agreement. Bumpy spoke again, voice even controlled. "Who told you to check?" The man stopped. He did not turn around at first. That hesitation lasted just long enough to be read. "Someone who doesn't like surprises," he said. Bumpy allowed himself a thin breath through the nose, not amusement, recognition. "Then tell him," Bumpy replied. "This one stayed outside." The man turned now. His face held something between relief and concern, relief at not being pressed, concern at not being done. "He won't like that," the man said. Bumpy's gaze did not change. Then he should have knocked himself. The words landed without force. They did not need any. For a moment the man seemed to consider saying more. His mouth opened slightly, then closed again. He nodded once, as if nodding could replace understanding, and stepped back toward the stairs. Bumpy watched him go without following. The man descended slowly, not running, not lingering. Each step sounded deliberate, as if he wanted them remembered. When the door to the stairwell closed, the hallway breathed again. Bumpy shut his own door and rested his back against it. He did not move for a long moment, not from fatigue, from certainty. The confrontation had passed without noise, without threat, without correction. Truth had surfaced, not through words, but through who had been sent and who had stayed away. That was always the real message. He returned to the table and sat. The hat remained where he had placed it earlier. He did not put it on. He did not need to go anywhere else today. The day had already come to him. The internal deadline settled closer now. Not urgent, just present. The sun angled lower, light shifting across the floor in long, quiet lines. By the time those lines disappeared, the matter would be decided, whether acknowledged or not. Outside, Harlem moved as it always did. Vendors called softly. Cars passed. A siren rose and faded without stopping nearby. Life did not pause for questions like this. It adjusted around them. Late afternoon brought another knock. Not on his door this time. Down the hall, someone else. The sound carried differently now, thinner, uncertain. Bumpy did not respond. He did not need to. Whoever knocked would learn something on their own. He stood and went to the door, opening it just enough to look down the hallway. The package still sat where it had all day, unclaimed, uncorrected, untouched. That was the consequence taking shape. Bumpy knelt for the first time, careful, deliberate. He did not reach out. He simply looked closer. The paper had creased slightly along one edge, settling into the floor. Time was already working on it. He spoke quietly, not to anyone in particular. "You had your chance." There was no answer. There did not need to be. He stood and closed the door again, leaving the package in the hall as if it were part of the building itself. From this point on, it no longer belonged to him. It belonged to whatever decision had been made by leaving it there. As evening deepened, Bumpy went about his routines unchanged. Dinner, a short rest, a glance at the window where night pressed its face against the glass. He did not think about what might be inside the package. That curiosity belonged to people who needed spectacle. What mattered was that it had been placed without permission and left without courage. The deadline passed without ceremony. No return, no message, no second attempt. When night settled fully, Bumpy sat in the quiet and allowed the truth to finish forming on its own. The package had done its job by failing. And somewhere, someone understood that silence could answer louder than delivery. If the weight was never meant to be lifted, what was it really testing, his door or their nerve? Night arrived without announcement. No sirens lingered, no voices carried. The building settled the way old places did, by agreement rather than effort. Bumpy returned to the hallway after dark. He did not turn on the overhead light. He did not need it. The shape of things mattered more than their detail now. The package was still there. It had shifted slightly, not from touch but from time. One corner had relaxed into the floor. The paper held a faint bend where gravity had finally made its claim. That small surrender told him enough. No one had come back. No one was coming back. He lowered himself into the chair he had placed earlier, angled so he could see the package without facing it directly. Power did not stare. Power allowed things to exist in its presence and decide what they wanted to become. Outside, a car door closed. Somewhere below, laughter rose, then moved on. Harlem did not pause for private reckonings. That was part of its discipline. Bumpy rested his hands on his knees, still, balanced, a man comfortable with waiting because waiting no longer asked anything from him. The internal line he had drawn that morning reached its edge now, not sharply, gently, like a tide meeting a shore that did not move. The deadline was here not because a clock said so, but because nothing else had happened. He listened for a knock. There was none. That absence carried more meaning than sound ever could. A knock would have been a request. Silence was admission. Bumpy spoke quietly. The words meant less for the hallway than for whoever might later repeat them. They don't come back for what they can't stand by. The building accepted this. The walls did not argue. The air did not shift. He thought briefly of the young man from earlier, sent without authority, returned without answers. That was how fear traveled now, delegated, diluted, careful not to be present when consequences arrived. Men like that believed problems faded if left alone. They did not understand that some things hardened instead. A door opened 2 floors down. Footsteps crossed the stairwell. Someone paused near the package, close enough to be aware of it, far enough not to claim it. Bumpy did not move. He did not announce himself. The footsteps retreated. Respect often arrived disguised as retreat. The hallway returned to stillness. Bumpy leaned back slightly and closed his eyes for a moment, not to rest, to confirm. The day had asked its question. The night had answered it. The object on the floor was no longer a test. It was a verdict waiting to be noticed. He opened his eyes again and looked toward the doorframe, the same line no one had crossed all day. There would be no escalation, no correction, no scene. Judgment had already taken place, quietly, completely. He rose from the chair and stood over the package without bending down. He did not need to. The meaning was already clear. What remained uncertain, pressing gently against the edges of the night, was simple. If no one claimed what they sent, who was left to carry the decision forward? Bumpy did not remove the package that night. He let it stay where it had chosen to end up. Objects, like men, revealed intent when left alone long enough. He returned to his apartment and closed the door without locking it. Locks were for people who believed force would arrive loudly. If anything came now, it would come careful. Careful things announced themselves by hesitation, not noise. He sat at the table and poured another cup of coffee. This one he drank warm, not because he needed it, but because routine mattered. Routine told the world nothing had been disturbed. Outside the window, streetlight washed the pavement in dull yellow. A man crossed the street and looked up at the building without stopping. His eyes moved on. That glance was not curiosity. It was confirmation. By late evening, the hallway had become something else. Not a passage, a message. Anyone who passed it felt the weight of that untouched paper and understood that someone had tried to speak without standing behind their words. That was a costly way to speak. Bumpy stood and walked back to the doorway one last time before sleep. He did not turn on the light. He did not approach the package. He simply stood within sight of it, coat unbuttoned, posture relaxed. He spoke once, soft enough that it belonged to the space more than to him. "This stays out here." It was not a rule, it was a fact. The night accepted it. No footsteps followed, no answer came. When he finally lay down, sleep came without argument. That was how he knew the matter had settled. Unfinished things disturbed rest. Finished things allowed it. Morning returned with a thin, gray light, the kind that made no promises. Bumpy rose, dressed, and stepped into the hallway. The package was gone. Not torn, not exploded into drama, simply removed, cleanly, quietly, by someone who understood timing better than courage. Bumpy looked at the spot where it had rested. A faint outline remained in the dust, like a memory that had not yet decided to leave. He did not smile. He did not nod. He absorbed it and moved on. Downstairs, the building breathed as usual. A woman swept her steps. A child argued with his shoes. Life resumed without comment. That was the final confirmation. He left the building and walked into the day, coat collar turned up against the cold. Men who saw him looked away quickly, not from fear but from clarity. Something had happened. They did not need to know what. By midday, the absence had traveled farther than the object ever could have. People understood that a line existed, and that crossing it required presence, not distance. That afternoon, someone asked him casually if he had received a delivery. Bumpy did not stop walking. "I don't sign for things I didn't ask for," he said. The man nodded, as if that settled something personal, and let the conversation die where it stood. By evening, the hallway no longer held tension, just space, the kind that remembered being important once. The consequence was simple and permanent. Nothing arrived uninvited again, not packages, not messages, not men sent to speak for others. Bumpy kept his habits unchanged. That was the point. Power that needed to announce itself was already slipping. That night, as he sat quietly, one thought remained, steady and unanswered, not troubling but instructive. If silence could carry a decision this far, what else had people been mistaking for weakness all this time? Morning did not arrive with relief. It arrived with order. Bumpy stepped into the hallway just after sunrise. The light was thin, pale, honest. It showed the floor exactly as it was. No package, no paper, no string. Just the faint outline where something had rested long enough to leave a memory behind. He stood there for a moment, hat in hand, not filling the space, not retreating from it. The absence had weight now. He let it settle. Whoever had taken the package had done so carefully. No scrape marks, no torn paper left behind. That told him more than any confession could. The sender had finally chosen presence, just not openly, too late to matter. Bumpy stepped over the outline and continued down the stairs. Outside, Harlem moved with its usual discipline. Shops opened. Men nodded without slowing. A delivery truck passed and did not stop. That detail mattered. Some habits changed quietly when lessons landed cleanly. He walked his usual route, unhurried, coat buttoned, posture loose. People noticed nothing different, which meant everything was different. When power worked properly, it left no debris. At a corner he paused, just long enough to be seen pausing. A man across the street looked away first, not out of fear, out of understanding. Whatever question had been asked yesterday had already been answered. By late morning, the absence had traveled farther than the object ever could have. No one spoke about it directly. They never did when things mattered. Instead, doors stayed closed. Deliveries arrived correctly or not at all. Messages were sent by men willing to stand behind them. Bumpy returned home before noon. The hallway greeted him like any other day now, just a hallway again. He liked that. Important spaces should not stay important for long. Inside his apartment, he placed his hat on the table and sat. The chair creaked the same way it always had. The world had not shifted. People had. He allowed himself one quiet thought, not spoken, not shared. The package had never been meant to be opened. It had been meant to test whether distance could replace accountability. Distance had failed. He poured coffee and drank it while it was hot. Routine restored. The only real consequence that ever lasted. What remained unanswered was not dangerous, only instructive. If refusal could redraw a boundary this cleanly, how many lines had been crossed simply because no one had bothered to stand still? The afternoon passed without interruption. That was the final sign. Bumpy remained inside, not hiding, not waiting, just present. Presence, when steady, made noise unnecessary. He sat by the window and watched the street move the way it always had. A man argued over change. A woman laughed once sharply, then caught herself. A boy ran too fast and was corrected by a voice that didn't chase him. Life continued. That was the consequence. The absence in the hallway did not call him back. It did not ask to be explained. It had finished its work by leaving nothing behind. He understood that better than most. When a thing disappeared cleanly, it meant the lesson had landed where it needed to land. Later he went out again, not for business, for air. He walked the block and returned without speaking to anyone who didn't speak first. No one tried. Men nodded. Some didn't. Both were acceptable. At the building entrance, a new delivery man stood reading a clipboard. He looked up, saw Bumpy, and stepped aside without being told. The package in his hand stayed where it was. He waited until Bumpy passed before continuing inside. That was new. Bumpy did not acknowledge it. Acknowledgement would have made it an event. He preferred it to be habit. Upstairs, the hallway remained ordinary. No chair, no outline, no memory that needed tending, just a passage restored to what it had always been meant to be. He liked that more than victory. Victory invited explanation. Order did not. He went inside and closed the door, not carefully, not forcefully, normally. That evening, a man he trusted stopped by. No name needed. They spoke about nothing important. Weather, a mutual acquaintance, a place that had closed down. Near the end, the man paused, then chose his words. "Things been quiet," he said. Bumpy nodded once. "That's how I keep them," he replied. No more was said. No more was needed. When the man left, Bumpy did not walk him out. He returned to his chair and sat in the quiet. The building hummed softly around him. Pipes, wind, distant traffic, sounds that belonged. The single consequence remained clear and permanent. From that day forward, nothing arrived without a knock. Not packages, not messages, not men sent to test distance. When someone wanted something, they showed up themselves or not at all. That rule did not need enforcement. It enforced itself. Bumpy leaned back and rested his hands on the arms of the chair. His posture did not change. His habits did not change. That was the real signal. Power that survived without adjustment was power that had already settled the matter. He thought once more of the package, not with curiosity but with finality. Whatever had been inside no longer mattered. It never had. What mattered was that it had waited outside long enough to expose the weakness behind it. Silence had carried the decision. Absence had delivered the message. Night came again, slow and calm. Bumpy turned off the light and let the room go dark. He did not review the day. He did not replay the moment. Men who won quietly did not revisit the field. As sleep approached, one thought remained, steady and unresolved, not demanding an answer, only consideration. If a door left unopened could redraw the rules of approach, how many confrontations in history were lost simply because someone reached out instead of standing still?